Amy was talking about like some of her favorite books. I have a soft spot for Tia Isa Wants a Car. Tia Isa quiere un carro. I was brought up by my grandma and my aunts and uncles. And in this book, we have Tia Isa, and the protagonist is being raised by her aunt Isa and her uncle. So I identify a lot, and I know a lot of our newcomer students, they don't always travel to America with their parents. That's not possible for different reasons. So that's one of those ways that I connect with this book, and I know other students may as well who are having that experience. I love that there's this tenacity that Tia Isa has, Aunt Isa. She's like, I want this car, and I think I'm gonna get it. And the whole theme is family involvement. She doesn't want it because she wants to look cool and it's a convertible. No, she wants it because there's enough room for her whole family to ride, and she wants to be able to take them to the beach. So there's a lot of family involvement. There's a lot of resilience, again, a lot of cell application in this book as well. Being tenacious, being resilient, keeping at your goal until you achieve it. That community-based support, everybody in the community starts kind of supporting her goal, and of course she achieves it. So that's one of the reasons why I like that book. I also really like Un Sillón para mi mamá, A Chair for My Mother. That's one of those books that it's really hard to talk about insurance for early learning, and it's important, and it's hard to find resources that kind of lay the foundation for you to start that conversation in an interesting, engaging way for kids. But this is a great resource if you want to talk about the importance of insurance. Again, for parents, talk about the importance of insurance with their kids. I also love Count on Pablo because at the end you have a salsa recipe, and I love food. I absolutely love it. But it's just such a cute book. It always makes me think about our migrant students, and our students that are working in agricultural community. They grow up, around all these crops and all these resources, and I feel like it's a really fun way to honor them as well. Anything you want to add, Amy?
I just want to know what Maritza said in the chat. Like, obviously, we're not trying to make any broad strokes about who does or doesn't read to their kids at home. We love that. If you have that tradition, that you can carry on into your classroom as well. And I think personally there's like a great social emotional component to that, reading to kids, if you have the chance with the book in the classroom, because it does give us that feeling that we got, when with that nostalgia and that comforting feeling of being read to. I used to even do it into middle school because I think that kids, if they didn't have it at home, they connect to it. But if they did, then they get that nostalgic part of it. So I love the idea of that. And just another application for any of these library books. Awesome. Okay, so we've got a couple more resources I want to make sure that we get through in this last 20 minutes here. Vocabulary. Obviously, we're here to talk about literacy. One of the authors I met with recently said that financial literacy rises when literacy rises. So I loved that. That really resonated with me. And we can't talk about literacy without vocabulary, and the domain-specific library or vocabulary, the domain-specific vocab that comes along with personal finance. So obviously we wanted to make sure we were giving you some sort of age-appropriate glossary. So what we did here is, this is just obviously a screen cap of it. You will receive the actual glossary in that resource package that will be emailed to you. So this is it's been adapted from, again, that Federal Reserve of St. Louis, their kind of information hub. They have a K through 5 glossary of economic and personal finance terms. I don't know what K through 5 students they were working with when they developed it, but I personally didn't find the language as kid-friendly as I would have liked in some cases. So I did make some adaptations and changes to it to simplify it, kid-friendly, ELL friendly, but also making sure that our director of personal finance, Ms. Pam Whaley, who is up until recently professor of economics at Western Washington, had a look at it to make sure we were accurate as well. So it's an 8-page document because there's a lot of vocab on there, but we wanted to make sure we were providing some sort of shared definition hub that could be useful for you. Obviously, there's a million ways that we can apply vocabulary within a K-5 classroom. I didn't want to dig too much into methods, anything from, we know word wall is good, effective, good pedagogy, great for multi-language learners or English language learners. Vocabulary splash was one activity that I spoke about with the English or with the ELA program supervisor at OSPI. But one I wanted to just demonstrate and kind of give you some consideration on are the Frayer models. I don't know how many people use Frayer models in their classroom, kind of in the 3-5 area, but I think these are great to fill out with a whole group with younger kids as well. Obviously, I left them blank here. It should have sent like examples or non-examples and what it is or what it isn't, what it looks like, what it doesn't. I always started the year with one of these, and it was a good teacher and a good student. And we filled it out together. What makes a good teacher? What makes a good student? And then we kept those posted in the room as kind of reminders to the agreements that we had kind of all considered and revisited them when we came back from, vacations as you're doing your PBIS review. But this particular question I think is so interesting. What is your personal definition of wealth? And if you think about that, you could maybe use the synonym rich, but I personally think that being rich and being wealthy would be two different things. And maybe I'm coming at it from that very social emotional development side. But if you think about wealth, you as a teacher, you think about what does it mean to be wealthy? Does that mean a brand new car? Does it mean a vacation? Does it just mean retirement before, a way too old of an age? Or what does it mean for us to be wealthy? Because I think this is a really important way for kids to start to dig into their own personal values around personal finance and what their priorities are. And also, again, great, vocabulary building. So this is one I love. And then I wanted to demonstrate another way that a Frayer model was used, some more vocabulary building, but this was kind of flipped. This was using a personal finance book to reinforce different scientific vocabulary. So kind of just showing how we can use the library to do both. Oh my gosh, we have a great quote in the chat that I have to share. Jack is rich. The guy who writes his paychecks is wealthy. And that was from Chris Rock. I love that. I think you could absolutely explore that with students as well. Great analogy there. So yeah, this is what you see in front of you is one of the lessons from the Hidden Figures lesson and resource guide. This is a popular one because it has that name recognition. The movie was really popular. So some of your kids might recognize this title. So this was support materials from the Reading is Fundamental website. And so Mary Zeigert, who is a teacher in North Thurston, she teaches 4th grade. She's also one of our fellows, which is our group of teacher advocates and instructional guides that we work with throughout the state. She sort of piloted this library for us when we were first developing it. And you can see kind of the resource she tried in the bottom right corner there. So this one included a discussion guide and the Frayer model, and then a crossword and a word search and a memory game. And so she dug into the Frayer model vocabulary activity. And these are some examples of work from her students that I was so excited about when we went and kind of did our debrief on how the lesson went. And one thing I would add too is that Mary has a very diverse classroom as far as the literacy level and the achievement gaps in reading of her students. And one thing I was really wanting to find out was how effective were those video lessons of the read alouds with those students. And her feedback was that it allowed the students that had those bigger achievement gaps to still follow along with the story and participate more. So I would hope that that would be a result you would also see replicated in your classroom. But as you can see, we have both segregation and turbulence here. So vocabulary very specific to the story with illustrations, definitions, and then examples and non-examples. Really love these examples of student work. It was very fulfilling. And then she actually extended this lesson. The kids were so into the book, she made it the reading for the week. And what she was able to do, she had the time to just develop a quick exit ticket. And so she asked her kids to think about career and money goals in a segregated world. That was really the topic. So she was trying to pull in that ELA, the social studies, the financial education, and the STEL. And I think this is just an example of how beautifully cross-curricular this work can be without a ton of effort. You can see the questions there. I'm not going to read through those verbatim for you, but what I just really loved was that she asked her students to think about opportunity cost in two different ways. She asked them to think about the opportunity cost of doing a job in a segregated workplace, which is, I think, a primary social and emotional cost that you're giving up there from the perspective of the hidden figures, of the computers in the story. And then question 6 is more about, what opportunity cost will you have to face to be successful? And those can also be, social emotional, but they can also be financial, educational. So looking at that side of it as well. So much social emotional development here, persevering and achieving goals, taking the perspective of others. So I just think this is a great example of how this learning can be extended if it's appropriate in your classroom and your students are into it. And of course, you have that freedom with your scope and sequence.